There's a way to drive the urgency and scale and yet make it relatable for each individual person. Connect it to a neighbor. Our director of communications often uses the example of a night she was driving home from the Pack the Pantries food drive that Fox 59 supports. And she pulled up to refuel her car, and the woman on the other side of the gas pump recognized her, had seen her on TV that day, asked if she was that person, and said, "Just a minute." And she literally emptied her purse to find $1.13 in coins and gave all of it to Sarah because she was a single mom with 4 kids and heard that with $1 you could provide 4 meals at that time. It's more now at Gleaners with our efficiency, but she didn't need the food line anymore. She'd recently gotten back on her feet, but she wanted us to take her $1.13 and feed another mom and 4 kids.
I also think about explaining your impact in the way of course, you have your inputs, the money that it takes and the supplies that it takes to do the things that you're doing, even if that's human resources. And then you have the outputs, how many hot meals you're serving, who you are serving the meals to. But then in that outcome portion, the short term, the medium term, the long term, that is where you really speak to the donor's motivation. So in the short term, when you're feeding those meals, and you're feeding them to children, they're showing up to school because they want to have a hot meal. In the medium term, they're performing well on tests because they're nourished and they have been attending more regularly. In the long term, they are having greater graduation rates, greater college acceptance rates, greater employability, right? So that breakfast does so much. And so who you're speaking to also determines the part of the outcome that you're speaking about.
I think it's critical when you're out raising major donor dollars and when you're out trying to grow your donor base and when you're out trying to increase the revenue you're bringing into your nonprofit, that you have a crystal clear understanding of who is the ideal major donor for you. Is it a man or a woman? Is there a certain age group? Do they live in a certain geographic region? What do they care about? Are they involved in tons of different boards? Have they ever been involved in a board before? What age are they? There's a whole bunch of different characteristics, and you have to recognize that your nonprofit is not a great fit for everyone. It simply isn't a great fit for everyone. If you are with the American Cancer Society and you're out raising money, you're probably not going to target people, or I would recommend you don't target people who have never had an issue with cancer before. They've never lost someone to cancer in their lives. They've never had someone close to them go through a significant cancer treatment. If you have to understand who your major donor target is. And it's like all marketing. The more you know your target, the greater opportunity you have to connect with them. The greater opportunity you have to connect with them leads you an opportunity to then cultivate them, which eventually leads you to what we're trying to do here, which is the major donor ask.
One of the first things I shared with our corporate fundraising team when I first got here was, if we ever did it, we're not doing it anymore in terms of calling a corporation once a year and, happily saying, would you like to be a gold or a silver or a bronze sponsor at the gala again this year? Well, thank you very much. I'll call you in a year and pretend we have a relationship. No, we actually aspire to less corporate donors in total, but deep, mutually beneficial, interactive relationships with corporate donors where they see clear value even before we tell them that that's the value.
I think the best way to cultivate your major donors is to include them in your mission, invite them to share advice with you, get their feedback, invite them to be a participant in a way that's meaningful to them. So when you're asking for them for their advice, finding out what that is that motivates them and then including them in that way. The furthermore that you can engage them, the more that you can cultivate them all along the way.
Now, what does cultivation mean? Well, it's not just sending them an email every 6 weeks telling them what it is that you're doing. You've got to reach out and get to know your major donors on an intimate level. You've got to understand what really matters to them. You've got to understand where is their heart at? What kind of an impact do they need to make in the world? And you've got to recognize that before you've earned the right to ask for major donor gift, you've got to know this person extremely well. You've got to know what they're passionate about, and you've got to know that they are ready to make a difference in your organization. In addition, from a cultivation standpoint, major donors don't just want to write checks. That's maybe not completely true. Most major donors just don't want to write checks. They want to be involved in the organization. So part of that cultivation process is to let them know that we're not just asking for your money. We want you to, and I love this word, we want you to partner with us so that you can help make a change in what it is that we're doing on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis.
Basically comes to the same conclusion. Donors want to feel like they're part of that fight with the nonprofit, depending on whatever cause it is that they are, struggling against, what disease they're trying to eradicate, what social or societal problem they're trying to solve. When donors feel like they have a sense that they're part of that mission and that the organization is doing good things with their dollars, that is by and large what keeps donors hooked. And there's a lot of ways you can do that, in your thanking process, making sure that you're thanking donors personally, quickly, telling them those impact stories. And then broadly in your other communications, your newsletters and your appeals, your other stewardship pieces, always communicating that impact back to the donor. When the donor feels like their dollars are really being put to work in an awesome way through your organization's services and all the great things that you're doing, that is by and large the best thing to keep those retention rates up.
First of all, to give them those simple prompts, right? To kind of put some tools in their toolbox to let them know that they don't have to know every fact and figure. Those prompts of we specialize in, we help them with, right? They have a personal connection to the mission. They are champions and advocates in ways that they may not even realize and they may not feel confident about. Let's start by having them write thank you notes, which is a fundraising activity, but doesn't necessarily feel as intimidating as making an ask. And then making calls, realizing how much donors appreciate you calling them to say thank you and appreciate your mission and what you're doing. And then move them all along the line to then encourage them ultimately to invite their friends to participate and actually work with you to make asks.
And here I have the same expectation of the 6 of us on the senior leadership team, the top 6 staff members. Depending on the conversation circumstance, I will sometimes say, all of our board and all of our staff leadership are financially committed to this organization. We'd like you to join us. That's an entirely different message than sort of the scripted, canned, will you donate to hungry people message that frankly any messenger could deliver. They need to be able to deliver a uniquely compelling message and one that comes with the credibility that they've already invested.
Yeah, I think probably the lowest hanging fruit is to maybe audit your gift acknowledgement process, right? So when a donor gives, what happens? Do you send a thank you letter within a certain amount of time? Do you maybe call that donor if they're a brand new donor and just say, hey, saw it was your first gift. Just wanted to say welcome to the family of donors. Would love to get you to know you more. Your online giving process. A lot of times there are some very automated things that happen through your website or through your online giving provider. Look at that, kind of put yourself in the donor's shoes, maybe donate to yourself quite literally and see what are we sending to people? What does that automatic email receipt look like? What does that confirmation page look like? And then what is it that they're going to get from you as kind of that formal acknowledgement? Is it a handwritten note? Is it an email with a quick video in it? Is it a phone call, like I said? Those, if you can maybe carve out some time to prioritize that kind of activity, as soon as possible after that gift is made, because there is a lot of interesting research to suggest the faster you thank a donor, the more impactful it is for donor retention rates. So I would look closely at that gift acknowledgement process as kind of the lowest hanging fruit.